One phone call turned his perfect day into a public interrogation, but what happened next? Nobody saw coming. You ever have one of those days where everything seems to line up perfectly, and then, out of nowhere, everything flips upside down? That's exactly what happened to Dominic Harlan on a warm Saturday afternoon in Plano, Texas. The sky was clear, not a single cloud in sight, and the sun sat high, casting bright light across the rows of tidy homes. It was the kind of day that makes you think everything's under control. Dominic believed that too, but he had no idea what was waiting for him just a few hours later. Dominic was a tall, lean man in his late 30s, dressed casually in a gray polo and dark jeans. He wasn't flashy, didn't draw attention. He was the kind of dad who kept his head down and did what needed to be done. Ever since the divorce, life had been about one thing: Kayla. His 7-year-old daughter was his entire world, and today he wanted to give her something she'd never forget. Kayla had been at her best friend's birthday party since the morning, laughing, eating cake, playing in a backyard filled with balloons and screaming kids. Dominic decided to show up early, surprise her, and take her to the park, where he had a little announcement planned. Something big, something life-changing. When he pulled up to the curb in his silver SUV, he could already hear the sound of kids running around and the faint echo of upbeat pop music from the backyard. He took a deep breath, adjusted his sunglasses, and smiled. This was going to be a good day. He walked up the driveway, nodded politely at a couple of parents lingering near the garage, and knocked on the door. Moments later, Kayla came sprinting through the hallway like a shot of energy. Her little sneakers squeaked against the hardwood floor. "Daddy!" she shouted, throwing her arms around his waist. "Hey, princess," Dominic said, scooping her up with one arm and hugging her tight. He kissed the top of her curly hair and smiled. "Ready for our special day?" Kayla grinned, eyes wide with excitement. "Yeah, can we go now?" Dominic laughed. "You sure you don't want another piece of cake?" "Nope, let's go," she said without hesitation. He waved to the birthday girl's mom, thanked her for having Kayla, and started walking back to the car with his daughter holding his hand. They were both smiling, chatting about what they'd do first. The park? Ice cream? Maybe both. Dominic opened the back door of the SUV and carefully buckled Kayla into her booster seat. He made sure the straps were snug, just like always. Then, he closed the door and started walking around to the driver's side. Across the street, a woman stood near her front porch, watering a hanging basket of flowers. Her name was Carla Peterson. She'd lived in that neighborhood for over 10 years and knew almost everyone, or at least she thought she did. As her eyes shifted to the man loading a little girl into an SUV, something inside her clicked. She didn't recognize him. Not his car, not his face, and the little girl. She didn't look like she belonged to him. Carla's grip on the watering can tightened as a thought slammed into her mind like a freight train. Is that man taking someone else's child? Dominic had no clue that across the street, a storm was starting to brew. He opened the driver's door, humming softly, completely unaware that within the next hour, flashing red and blue lights would surround him, and his life would never be the same. But just as he started the engine, Carla made a decision that would turn a simple Saturday into a nightmare. Carla Peterson set the watering can down on the porch rail. Her heart thudded in her chest as she wiped her damp hands on her jeans. She leaned forward, squinting at the man across the street. Mid to late 30s, dark skin, neat beard, sunglasses. She didn't recognize him at all. And around here, in a neighborhood where most people knew each other by name, that was strange. The girl, though, Carla couldn't stop staring at her. Petite frame, light brown skin, curly hair tied into 2 little puffs, bright pink t-shirt. She looked worried? Or was that just Carla's imagination? Maybe it was the way the man buckled her in so carefully, checking the straps twice, then glancing over his shoulder like he didn't want anyone watching. That's what did it for Carla. That look. Her stomach turned cold. "This doesn't feel right," she whispered to herself. The man, Dominic, closed the back door and walked around to the driver's side. He moved quickly, almost too quickly, like he wanted to get out of there before anyone noticed. Carla's instincts kicked in. She reached for her phone on the porch table, her hand trembling slightly. She didn't want to overreact, but what if this was real? What if a little girl was about to disappear forever because no one spoke up? Carla hesitated, chewing her bottom lip. She could call one of the other neighbors, maybe ask if they knew him, but there was no time for that, not if what she feared was true. She punched in 3 numbers, 911. The dispatcher picked up almost instantly. 911, what's your emergency? Carla's breath caught for a moment. Hi, I think I'm witnessing a kidnapping. The words felt heavy even as they left her mouth. She lowered her voice, glancing around like someone might hear. There's a man putting a little girl into an SUV across the street from me. He doesn't live here. I've never seen him before. The dispatcher's tone was calm, steady. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line with me. Can you describe the man? Carla swallowed hard, her eyes glued to Dominic as he adjusted his rearview mirror. Black male, maybe mid-30s, gray polo shirt, dark jeans, sunglasses. He's driving a silver SUV. Looks like a Toyota Highlander, maybe? License plate. Oh, I can't see the whole thing yet. And the child? Can you describe her? She's a little girl, maybe 7 years old, light brown skin, pink t-shirt. I don't think she looks like him. The dispatcher's voice stayed calm, but there was a subtle urgency underneath. Okay, you're doing great. Are they still there? Yes, he just got in the driver's seat, Carla whispered, her pulse quickening. He's starting the car. Stay where you are. Officers are on the way. Carla lowered the phone, her mouth dry as sandpaper. She felt a knot in her stomach. What if she was wrong? What if this was just some dad picking up his kid? But what if she was right? She couldn't risk it. She wouldn't be the neighbor who stood by and did nothing. Across the street, Dominic glanced at his rear view, adjusting it slightly before pulling away from the curb. He had no idea 2 squad cars were already less than 5 minutes out, speeding through residential streets with sirens muted and lights off to avoid drawing attention too soon. As Carla ended the call, she realized her hands were shaking. She took a deep breath, then another. She told herself she did the right thing. If it turned out to be nothing, well, better safe than sorry, right? But something in her gut twisted as the SUV disappeared down the block. And as those red and blue lights began flashing in the distance, Carla had no idea her decision was about to set off a chain reaction that would leave the entire neighborhood talking for years to come. Dominic hummed softly as he merged onto Spring Creek Parkway, Kayla in the back seat kicking her feet against the booster seat, singing some tune she learned at school. His heart felt light. Today was supposed to be the turning point, a new chapter for both of them. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror and smiled. You excited? He asked, keeping his tone playful. Kayla grinned, eyes bright. You said it's a surprise. I've been thinking about it all day. Dominic chuckled. Well, keep thinking, kiddo. You'll find out soon enough. For a moment, everything was perfect. Then, in the rearview mirror, something caught his eye. A pair of headlights, closing in fast. Then another set. And then, the unmistakable flash of blue and red lights erupted behind him. Dominic's smile vanished. What in the world? He murmured, easing his foot off the gas. He wasn't speeding. He hadn't run a stop sign. Why would... Kayla tilted her head, sensing the change. Daddy, why are the police behind us? Dominic forced a calm smile as he signaled and pulled to the curb. It's okay, sweet pea. They probably just need to talk to me about something. But even as he said it, a knot formed in his gut. 2 patrol cars boxed him in, one in front, one behind. Doors flew open. 2 officers approached with deliberate caution, hands near their holsters. Dominic could feel his pulse hammering against his ribs. The taller officer, Ramon Torres, had a commanding presence, broad-shouldered and stone-faced. The other, Danielle Carter, moved with equal intensity, her hand hovering near her duty belt. Dominic rolled down his window slowly, keeping his hands visible on the steering wheel. Afternoon, officers. Is there a problem? Sir, Torres said firmly, his voice deep and clipped. Turn off the engine and place your hands where we can see them. Dominic's brows furrowed. Okay. He complied, cutting the ignition and spreading his hands wide. Everything all right? Step out of the vehicle, Carter ordered, her tone sharp. Now. Kayla's small voice piped up from the back seat. Daddy, what's happening? Dominic turned slightly, forcing a calm tone. It's okay, baby girl. Everything's fine. Sir, step out, Torres repeated, louder this time. Dominic opened the door slowly, his palms facing outward. Okay. I'm cooperating. As soon as his feet touched the pavement, Torres gestured for him to move toward the sidewalk. Dominic complied, glancing nervously at Kayla, who was now clutching her seatbelt with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, what's your name?" Torres asked. "Dominic Harlan," he answered steadily, though his throat felt dry. "Can someone please tell me what this is about?" Carter positioned herself near the passenger side, keeping Kayla in her line of sight. Torres stood firm in front of Dominic. His expression didn't soften. "Mr. Harlan, are you aware that a report was made about you taking a child who may not be yours?" Dominic blinked, stunned. "What? Are you serious? That's my daughter." "We'll need to verify that," Torres said flatly. Dominic's voice rose an octave, anger creeping in despite his effort to stay composed. "Verify? She's 7 years old. She calls me Dad because I am her dad." Kayla's voice trembled from the back seat. "Daddy, are they mad at you?" Dominic forced himself to lower his tone. "No, baby, they're just confused." Torres didn't flinch. "Sir, do you have identification? Proof of custody?" "My wallet's in the car," Dominic said, gesturing toward the console. "I can get it if you—" "Stay right there," Carter cut in, already circling toward the driver's door. She retrieved the wallet carefully, flipping it open to check his license. Torres kept his eyes locked on Dominic. "Do you have any paperwork showing your relation to the child?" Dominic's jaw tightened. "Not on me. Who carries that everywhere?" Torres didn't respond. He signaled to Carter, who nodded and stepped back to make a call over her shoulder. Neighbors were starting to appear now. First 1, then 3, then 5. Phones out. Recording. Whispering. Dominic could feel every camera lens drilling into his back. He swallowed hard, his fists clenching at his sides. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but Kayla's tear-streaked face kept him grounded. He had to stay calm, for her. Across the street, Carla stood frozen on her porch, phone in hand, heart pounding. She didn't expect this to happen so fast. And now, watching that little girl cry in the back seat, doubt gnawed at her. Had she made a terrible mistake? Dominic exhaled slowly, trying to steady his voice. "Officer, please, let me call my mother. She'll confirm everything." Torres gave a curt nod. "We'll get to that. For now, stay put." Dominic closed his eyes briefly. This was supposed to be the best day of Kayla's life. But now, it was spiraling into something else entirely. And as the officers stepped aside to radio in more information, the tension on that sidewalk was about to explode in ways no one could predict. Dominic stood on the curb, hands visible, breathing slowly like he'd coached himself through a storm he never saw coming. Across the street, whispers were multiplying, spreading like dry leaves in the wind. A small crowd of neighbors was forming now, mothers with folded arms, dads in baseball caps, teens holding up their phones like this was some viral clip waiting to happen. "Is that the guy?" one woman whispered to another, loud enough for Dominic to hear. A man shook his head. "Don't know him. Never seen that car before." Dominic clenched his jaw but didn't speak. Every word would feel like gasoline right now. His daughter's quiet sobs behind the glass were sharp enough to cut through bone. He turned slightly, catching her eyes through the window. "Baby, it's okay," he mouthed, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "Everything's fine." Kayla didn't look convinced. She wiped her cheeks with tiny fists, hiccuping softly. Officer Carter moved back toward Torres, phone pressed to her ear. Dominic caught snippets. Running his license now, child in the back seat, waiting on dispatch confirmation. It was surreal. The way they moved, the way they avoided eye contact like he was some criminal trying to play innocent. It burned deep. Finally, Dominic spoke, his voice low but steady. "Officer Torres, can I please just talk to you? Away from all these cameras?" Torres didn't blink. "Sir, everything needs to stay visible for everyone's safety." "Everyone's safety," Dominic repeated, louder this time. His control cracked for a moment. "That's my little girl crying her eyes out in the back seat because some neighbor decided I don't look like her daddy." Heads turned, phones tilted closer. Dominic took a breath, forcing the anger back down before it swallowed him. Carter returned, lowering her phone. "License checks out, no warrants, no issues." "Good," Dominic shot back. "Now, can we wrap this up?" Torres's tone stayed even. "Not yet. We need confirmation about the child. You said you could call someone?" "Yes, my mother, or her grandmother, whoever picks up first." Dominic reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone with slow, deliberate movements so nobody could twist it later. He dialed, pressed the speaker button, and held it out. Come on, Ma, pick up, he muttered under his breath. After 2 rings, a warm voice filled the air. Hey, baby, what's going on? You two having fun? Dominic didn't waste time. Ma, you're on speaker with the police. They need to confirm Kayla's my daughter. A pause, then sharp disbelief. What? Of course she is. Kayla, baby, you there? From inside the SUV, Kayla hiccuped. Grandma? Yeah, sugar. Tell them who your daddy is. Kayla sniffled, her voice breaking. Daddy's right here. Can we go now? Dominic closed his eyes just for a second, letting that tiny voice ground him. Torres and Carter exchanged a glance. Torres lowered his tone slightly. Ma'am, can you confirm your son's name and your granddaughter's name for the record? The exchange lasted another minute. Grandma confirmed everything, even threw in Kayla's middle name for good measure. When the call ended, Carter took a step back, shoulders softening just a fraction. Looks legit, she murmured to Torres. Torres nodded, but procedure was procedure. We're still going to need to log a report. Dominic exhaled, sharp and bitter. Fine, log it, frame it, hang it on your wall if you want. Just let my daughter out of that car before she thinks her daddy's a criminal. Carter gave a small nod and opened the rear door gently. Kayla, sweetheart, you can come out now. The little girl unbuckled slowly, sliding into Dominic's arms the second she was free. He held her tight, burying his face in her hair as her sobs shook against his chest. Daddy's got you, he whispered. Always. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder now, like bees buzzing around the edges of his vision. Some folks looked embarrassed. Others kept recording. Carla stood frozen on her porch, color draining from her face. Dominic turned, locking eyes with her across the street. That look, quiet, steady, full of something she couldn't name, hit harder than any words could have. But words were coming, just not yet. Because as the tension began to thin and officers moved toward their cruisers, Dominic's mind was already racing. He could walk away, take Kayla home, let this simmer into gossip that would burn out in a week. Or he could do something none of them would forget. And as he buckled Kayla back in and climbed into the driver's seat, his decision was already made. What came next would turn this entire neighborhood upside down. Dominic sat in the SUV for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. He stared straight ahead, taking slow, measured breaths while Kayla sniffled quietly in the back seat. The sound of her soft sobs cut deeper than any insult could. It's okay, princess, he said gently, glancing back with a tired smile. We're almost done here. But they weren't done. Not yet. Officer Carter tapped on the window, motioning for him to step out again. Dominic groaned inwardly, but opened the door without a word. The second his feet hit the pavement, Carter spoke in a firm, almost apologetic tone. Mr. Harlan, we've confirmed everything with your mother, but we need to document the incident for our report. It'll only take a few minutes. Dominic laughed under his breath, dry, bitter. Sure, a few minutes. Been hearing that for the last hour. Torres joined them, holding a small notepad. We need your statement, sir. Start from the beginning. Dominic shifted his weight, folding his arms. The beginning? All right. The beginning is me trying to surprise my daughter with a fun day. That's it. That's the whole story. Torres didn't flinch. Sir, I need details. Where you picked her up. Where you were headed. Dominic's eyes burned. You really think I'd lay out my weekend itinerary in front of every neighbor, holding a phone like this is some reality show? The officer paused, glanced at the small crowd still lingering across the street, then lowered his tone. We can do this in the car, if that's better. Dominic hesitated. Part of him wanted to shout, make a scene, call out every person watching like they were waiting for him to explode. But he held it in. For Kayla. Always for Kayla. Fine, he muttered, following Torres to the cruiser. Inside, the air felt stale, heavy with that faint scent of vinyl and disinfectant. Torres slid into the driver's seat, flipping open the notepad again. Dominic sat rigid in the back, hands clasped so tightly they ached. Where were you headed? Torres repeated. The park, Dominic said flatly. After that, maybe ice cream, then home. Which park? Preston Meadow. Torres scribbled, his pen scratching quietly. And where do you live, Mr. Harlan? Right now, Richardson, Dominic said. But that's about to change. Torres raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. Dominic wasn't offering more anyway. Back in the SUV, Kayla peeked out the window, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny to her chest. She didn't understand why Daddy was sitting in another car, why everyone looked at them like something was wrong. All she knew was that this was supposed to be the happiest day ever, and now it felt like the worst. Meanwhile, across the street, Carla Peterson stood frozen, her phone hanging limply in her hand. Her stomach churned like she'd swallowed stones. She kept replaying the moment she made that call, the fear in Kayla's voice, the look in Dominic's eyes when he realized what was happening. Carla told herself she was doing the right thing. She believed it then. But now, watching a father humiliated in front of his child because of her assumption, she wasn't so sure. Finally, after what felt like forever, Torres closed the notepad and gave a curt nod. "All right, we're done. You can go." Dominic stared at him for a beat, then leaned forward slightly. "That's it? After all this? 2 hours of treating me like I snatched my own kid, and now it's just, you can go?" Torres met his gaze evenly. "Sir, we respond to calls. That's our job. You understand that?" Dominic let out a hollow laugh. "Yeah, I understand plenty." He stepped out, his movements slow, deliberate. He could feel every pair of eyes following him as he walked back to his SUV. Kayla's face lit up the second he opened the door, and that alone kept his fury from spilling out in front of her. "Ready to go, Princess?" he asked softly. She nodded quickly, clutching his arm as if he might vanish if she let go. Dominic kissed her forehead, then slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. But as he pulled away, past the cluster of neighbors still whispering and filming, something hardened inside him. He could let this slide, pretend it never happened. But why should he? Why should Kayla remember this as the day Daddy got treated like a suspect? No, he had something better in mind. Because this wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of something no one on that street would ever forget. Dominic's SUV rolled slowly down the street, the hum of the engine barely masking the storm inside his head. Kayla sat quietly in the back seat now, her little bunny clutched tight, eyes still shiny with tears. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You good, Princess?" She nodded, though her voice came out small. "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" The question nearly shattered him. Dominic's grip on the wheel tightened, knuckles white. "No, baby, we didn't do a single thing wrong. Some folks just, they don't always see things the way they should." Kayla tilted her head. "Like, they need new glasses?" Dominic chuckled softly despite the weight in his chest. "Yeah, exactly like that." For a few minutes, they drove in silence. But Dominic wasn't just heading home. No, he was on his way to the park, the very place he'd planned to bring Kayla before all this started. He wasn't canceling their day because of someone else's ignorance. In fact, now, he had a reason to make this moment even bigger. When they pulled into Preston Meadow Park, the sun was dipping just enough to paint the sky in streaks of orange and gold. Dominic parked near the pavilion, where a few tables sat under a wide, shady roof. Kayla perked up the second she saw the balloons tied to the posts. "Daddy, are those for us?" she asked, her earlier sadness melting like ice in the sun. Dominic smiled. "They sure are." He hopped out, opening her door like nothing had happened, like the last 3 hours weren't burned into his mind. Kayla jumped out and ran toward the tables where a bright banner flapped lightly in the breeze. It read in bold letters, "Welcome home, Kayla." Her little mouth fell open. "Home." Dominic walked up behind her, crouching so they were eye to eye. "Yep. You know how Daddy's been saying things are going to change? Well, we're moving. And not just anywhere. We're moving right here, this neighborhood." Kayla blinked in surprise. "Like, where the party was?" "Exactly," Dominic said, smiling wider now. "Our new house is 2 streets over. It's got a backyard big enough for you to run around in every single day." Her face lit up like fireworks. "Really? Really?" she squealed, throwing her arms around his neck. And in that moment, Dominic's heart felt whole again. He had been waiting to share this news for weeks. And after what happened earlier, this wasn't just about a new home. This was about showing every single person who doubted him that he belonged here, more than they realized. As if on cue, a few neighbors from the park started walking over. Some had seen the police cars earlier. Some had already heard whispers. They stopped when they saw the banner, the balloons, and Dominic holding his daughter with the biggest smile on his face. Carla Peterson was among them. Her steps slowed as guilt weighed her down like lead. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her eyes flicking from Kayla's joyful grin to the man she had reported hours earlier. Dominic didn't ignore her. In fact, he walked straight toward her, Kayla still clinging to his side. The crowd fell silent, the tension so thick you could almost grab it. "Carla, right?" Dominic said, his tone calm but firm. She swallowed hard. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I thought—" "You thought you were doing the right thing," Dominic cut in. "I get that. I really do. But let me ask you something." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the small crowd. "How many of you ever thought that before you dialed 911, maybe you could just walk across the street, say hello, ask a question, get to know the people living around you?" No one spoke. The only sound was Kayla's soft breathing as she rested her head against his shoulder. Dominic's voice stayed steady. "Today could have ended a whole lot worse. For me, for her." He kissed the top of Kayla's head. "But instead, I'm standing here telling you this. Kayla and I, we're your new neighbors. So next time, instead of assuming the worst, maybe just try talking first." A ripple of shame passed through the group. Some looked down at their shoes. Others murmured apologies under their breath. Carla's cheeks burned as she whispered, "You're right. I was wrong." Dominic didn't gloat. He just nodded and turned back to Kayla, his smile returning like the sun after a storm. "Come on, princess. Let's show you your new home." But as they walked toward the car, Dominic knew this day would stick with every person who witnessed it, for reasons far bigger than balloons and banners. Dominic drove slowly through the neighborhood streets, Kayla practically bouncing in her booster seat now. Every house they passed, she pointed and asked, "Is that ours?" until they pulled up to a cream-colored two-story home with a bright red door. "This one," Dominic said softly, cutting the engine. Kayla gasped. "It's so big." Dominic smiled, taking in the sight himself. He had worked for this moment, every late night, every sacrifice, every doubt he had pushed past. This house wasn't just a building, it was a promise. Kayla jumped out the second he opened the door, racing up the walkway and spinning around on the porch like it was her stage. Dominic followed slowly, feeling the weight of the day start to lift, though the sting of what happened earlier lingered like a shadow at the edge of the light. He unlocked the door and let Kayla step inside first. Her little feet tapped against the hardwood as she ran from room to room, shouting things like, "This can be my room," and "Look at the backyard." Dominic leaned against the doorway for a second, letting out a deep breath. He should have been angry. He should have been bitter. But as he listened to Kayla's laughter echo through the house, something shifted inside him. Anger wouldn't teach anyone anything. Grace would. Minutes later, they sat on the back porch, Kayla munching on a snack while Dominic stared out at the yard. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Everything okay now, baby?" He typed back, "Yeah, Ma, better than okay." But his mind kept circling back to the people standing in that park, the looks on their faces, the silence when he called them out. They weren't bad people. They were people who didn't know better, or maybe didn't try hard enough to. He turned to Kayla, who was swinging her legs against the porch steps. "Hey, princess," he said gently. "You know what happened today when those officers stopped us?" Kayla looked up, her big eyes curious. "Yeah, because the lady thought you were bad." Dominic nodded slowly. "That's right. Sometimes people think things about others just because they don't understand, or because they're scared. But you know what we do when that happens?" "What?" she asked softly. "We show them who we really are," he said with a small smile. "We stay kind. We stay strong. And we don't let anybody make us feel like we don't belong." Kayla nodded, taking it in the way only a child can. Pure, simple truth, landing where it matters most. The evening sun dipped low, painting everything gold. Dominic wrapped an arm around his daughter and pulled her close. For the first time that day, peace settled in like an old friend. Tomorrow, the whispers would fade. The videos would stop circulating. But the memory of that moment, the flashing lights, the looks, the humiliation, would never fully vanish. And maybe that was okay, because sometimes the hardest days carry the biggest lessons. Dominic kissed Kayla's forehead and whispered, almost to himself, "We're home now." We all make choices every day, some big, some small, and sometimes those choices come from fear instead of understanding. But before we judge, before we assume, what if we paused and just talked? One conversation can stop a disaster before it starts. If this story hit you in any way, share it. Talk about it with someone today, because the world doesn't change in one big move. It changes when ordinary people decide to see each other as human first. And if you want more stories like this that make you think, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. And remember, lead with grace, not assumptions.